the reality is the riskiest part of the transaction is this process from when we go under contract. You have an agreement between a buyer and a seller, right,
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
From that point forward, there's this process and there's a bunch of stuff that happens before you actually get to the closing, signing, and then keys, which don't necessarily all happen at the same time, which
yeah.
we'll get
it
into.
It can sometimes, but
Yeah,
not
yeah.
usually. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Welcome to Albuquerque Real Estate Talk, episode 566, mid-January 2026. And it is Tego and Tracy Venturi, as always, and we have Leah Romero Kaiser joining us today as the transaction specialist, and we're going to be talking about that. Anyway, here
Could
we
you
are,
say
Tracy.
that any faster? Transaction specialist?
I know, exactly.
Just like, whew.
We're gonna go deep in the weeds on, well, not too deep. We don't want to go too deep, but we want to give people a really good overview of what happens when you put a home under contract or your home goes under contract, depending if you're the buyer or the seller. All those little details and things that are happening in the background before you actually get to the closing table.
Yep.
So we're gonna go into that.
Exciting, fun stuff.
Yeah, Tracy, anything you want to share before we get into that?
Well, I wanted to make sure we spend time today talking about 55 plus communities. So
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna give it a little bit of time, do the deep dive on the transactions behind the scenes kind of things, but also talk about great communities around the metro area.
Yeah, we do have some adult communities around the Albuquerque area that are excellent, and people need to be aware of them. So
Huge range too. When I started looking at it for this segment, I was like, oh yeah, I've shown that. Oh, that one too. Yep, we've got that one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
fun.
So Leah, you're joining us. You are a
Longtime seasoned real estate pro.
yes, for
Right?
sure,
That
for sure.
enjoys doing the paperwork, the dotting the I's, the crossing the T's.
Yes.
And making us all look great, because behind the scenes, we know that we can rely on you, that you're sitting at your desk when we need something and we're out in the field with a client. We know that everything behind the scenes is moving forward smoothly.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and it's really what I prefer to be doing. I prefer to be the puppeteer, the orchestrator of all of the things. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I like that. The
puppeteer.
the conductor of
Yes.
the orchestra.
Yes.
Yes. So most buyers and sellers may not realize all these things that are happening. Like they the exciting part as a buyer, right, Tracy, is you're looking for homes and you're excited and you do the negotiations and that's really exciting, and then you win and you're under contract.
You win.
You win. But in 2021, it was definitely winning because we had 20 offers on the same house many times. But
Right.
but the reality is the riskiest part of the transaction is this process from when we go under contract. You have an agreement between a buyer and a seller, right,
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
From that point forward, there's this process and there's a bunch of stuff that happens before you actually get to the closing, signing, and then keys, which don't necessarily all happen at the same time, which we'll get into.
It can sometimes, but
Yeah,
not usually. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so in the real estate transaction, it's not just paperwork. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, in this episode, we want to just share people what the takeaway is going to be. What's all this stuff happening? So you kind of have an idea. You're not just, hallucinating what's happening, during your real estate transaction. So what does a transaction coordinator actually do?
On a very basic level, what I've tried to tell people is I allow the client to stay in their emotions. They get to enjoy if you're a buyer, you get to enjoy dreaming about what that's going to continue to mean and how it looks, and how they get to stay in their emotional state. For a seller, that means they get to continue to work on the next steps. Where are they going forward? For my brokers, who I also work for, they get to focus on what's next. They get to be out in the field, like Tracy said, and continue to work with other clients and get them in the same position, while I'm handling all of the background things, keeping us in dates within our deadlines, of which there are 61 that we just figured out.
61 deadlines from contract to close?
from
Deadlines.
contract to close.
Yeah.
Dates, and when we say dates, we're talking
We're
about
talking
deadlines in
in
most
most cases.
Okay.
Anything from your HOA documents, your title binder, inspections as they come through.
Yeah.
I rely heavily on communication between all of the partners, title companies, lenders, if there is one, if we're not doing a cash transaction, our clients, brokers, co-op brokers, their TC. It's sort of an octopus type of situation. I have a lot of tentacles.
Yeah,
that
and there's
are
a lot of
simultaneously
people
working.
involved. Like this morning, one moment you're talking to a photographer, the next moment you're talking to
A
A
s-
septic
a
guy.
septic company, talking to 'cause-
Talking to.
yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very loose term.
Yeah. You were encouraging him with very
Force.
persuasive
Persuasive.
language that
To
he had certain
just
things he had to get
get
done
his job done.
because
Yeah.
he made some promises that maybe didn't come through. Anyway, so I'm
Absolutely.
sorry, I'm getting off track. But
Um,
but that's part of it, right?
It is part of it. It's my job to reduce surprises, right?
Yeah.
I am here to make sure that we stay on track, that we're not missing those deadlines if they occur. The buyers and the sellers don't need to memorize the contract, nor necessarily do our brokers, but somebody needs to manage it, which is my job.
Yeah, and I think people forget this is a contract with dates and contingencies and things that have to happen. Both the buyer and the seller have
Yes.
certain responsibility, the buyer in particular.
The buyer in particular.
And if those things don't happen, you're either out of contract or you've missed the opportunity to object to something if there was some sort of objection deadline, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So a contingency is just a condition that has to be met in order for the deal to continue to move forward. So those can be high-level categories with money and financing. We have to provide pre-quals or proof of funds. Legal ownership, meaning the title company has to do their job and provide us a title binder within the specified dates within the contract. We have to review those and make sure that we don't have any encumbrances or liens or transcripts of judgments that might come up. Once we get all of those documents, then it is our job to disclose those to the buyer, make sure they're informed, see if they have any questions. Missing a contingency can waive rights. It can shift risk from one party to the other. It can also just be a complete deal killer if we don't get earnest money in on time. A lot of people don't understand.
The contract says
that's
no
an-
earnest money
yeah.
on time. The contract's void.
It's an automatic termination, which a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
If you don't have that in, that's a quiet termination.
Well, and I think one thing we need to talk about in this day and age, most agreements now are being signed electronically.
Yes.
And I think people need to make sure they're understanding what they're agreeing to. Again, both the buyer and the seller, they look at the top line. Let's say you're the seller, you look at the top line and you're going, oh, great, that's my price. I'm good. It's going to close by this date. And then they don't dig into the details.
Right.
Buyer, same thing, right? So your job is to make sure maybe they didn't quite understand all these little nuances in the contract. Your job is to make sure they do understand it and keep them in compliance.
Absolutely. We pull out things like insurance. If we have, especially important, if we have a lender involved, they need to be shopping for insurance pretty much immediately. Get a quote in place. They don't have to pay for it, but they have to understand that that's going to be their policy amount and get that to their lender to make sure that it factors in and it's going to be in accordance with their DTI and keep ratios accurate.
So let's just kind of run through this. Let's think about this, all the different contingencies. Obviously, it's turning in earnest money or a time off
Tom
market
fee.
fee. Yep.
Yeah.
It could be, again, delivery of certain documents. It could be the title insurance or title commitment, as they call it.
Yes.
Making sure it has clear title.
Making sure that's clear title. The survey, right? That's another contingency. It could be an appraisal, correct?
Yes. Inspections, like insurance. It could be something as simple as proof of funds or a pre-qual letter.
Yeah.
That's a contingency in the contract. If you don't provide that, then we're outside of contract deadlines.
And then there's all these other things that are dependent on the property, such as a well, if there's a well on the property.
Well, like permits. So permits for things like a well, right?
Correct.
Permits for things like a septic system.
Well,
Those
and it
it's
could
not
be
just the inspection.
No, I'm sorry, just thinking about permits. Let's say there was a recent remodel or an addition to the house, right? That may be something the buyer wants an option to review.
A
And-
water heater. It can be something as basic as a water heater being installed that doesn't have the green tag. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, there's a lot of contingencies that are standard in the purchase agreement, but a buyer could also add additional contingencies if they choose to when they're drafting their purchase agreement, if they feel
What-
it's appropriate for
I saw a
the
big one last night.
Yeah.
I was reviewing an offer one of our brokers was writing, and it has a sale contingency. So they need to sell the house they live in currently to be able to buy the house they want to buy. So there's a whole contingency about that house needing to actually not just get a buyer, but sell, close, fund so that they can buy the other house. So that's a whole nother
Yeah.
thing.
So I think the big thing, this contingency word is very broad and can cover a lot of things, even though
Yes.
there's standard things in the purchase agreement that could be, again, you could write in anything you want, that the rain barrels must stay with the property, or we have no deal.
Right. Even though they're not attached to the property, we have to pay attention to those things. I want to go back and restart this really briefly. We are a team. We have Leah who works for us, who works for all of the realtors on our team. But a lot of realtors in our market are solo. They don't have a team. They work for themselves. They might do all of this themselves. They might do all these
Yes.
contract to close.
Many do. Yeah.
And many do. And some hire somebody to do it for them. And they're independent transaction coordinators. We quickly call them TCs, transaction coordinators. So they can hire somebody to help them do the paperwork and watch dates and deadlines for them. We just happen to have a full team, and we have a lot of support, just like we have Sam doing our marketing and our producing. We have Leah, we have office management, we've got people. So just to kind of go back and say, Leah's pretty special. We've got her right here. She watches all of our contracts and things. But when you work with a solo broker, it might be just them, and it might be them and somebody they've hired to help them with paperwork.
And along with that, Leah, we have a system too. We have a platform
Yes.
to manage this as well, because
Yes.
I know back in the day we used to all do it on paper, right? And we had paper checklists.
Kind of miss those days.
Well,
My big folders.
yeah,
rocking around,
yeah, I know the big folder. Everybody had a
Three
folder.
rings.
Yeah, remember back in the day, I was like, remember, open the folder every day for every file that
day.
you have.
We had
Yeah,
them
yeah.
stacked up on my.
Now we just
that's
open them digitally.
how I
but
cut
yeah.
my teeth. I kind of
Yeah.
miss those. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But also, I've gotten really accustomed to the two screens. So
Yeah.
evolution is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about. So we talked about contingency. Let's talk about dates and deadlines. So
Okay.
we've got a couple, key dates. Obviously, the date the property goes under contract,
Otherwise known as the date of acceptance.
date of
yes.
acceptance, which is an important
Yes.
term
So
in our agreement.
That's sort of when the clock starts on a lot of things.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, date of acceptance, and then the other one is settlement signing date,
Also
which is
known
not
as closing date.
which isn't necessarily the same thing as closing date.
Not at all.
Yeah. So, but then there's a whole bunch of other dates in there, and if any of those dates get missed, a couple things can happen, right?
Yes. So if any of the dates get missed, we can do, well, there's some that are just quiet termination if both parties so choose.
Right.
They have to be willing to actually terminate. Or we have a form that's been around not that long, a couple of 3 years, I think, probably called
Yep.
the 2-day notice.
Yeah. Notice of default. Yeah.
And so what that does is the party that notices that you've defaulted. So if we're on the buyer end and we don't provide earnest money, or we don't provide proof of funds or the pre-qualification letter, the listing side can issue us that 2-day notice. And what that does is restarts the clock. It allows us 48 hours to get whatever it is that we've missed in place, or it is a termination. We move to, if there's earnest money on the file, distribute earnest money.
And,
Or
and
we
that
can do
that one
something-
applies to when there's something that one party is supposed to do and they don't do
There's
it.
no action,
Right.
correct?
It doesn't apply to something like a home inspection, because the
Or
home inspection.
title binder that you're relying on a third party for.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, there.
You
again,
guys
when-
are going deep in
I
the
know we're
weeds
getting,
here.
but the one thing I want to note is there's a home inspection objection deadline.
Yes.
If the buyer misses that, that's not a default of contract. All they've done is
Waived a right.
waived the
waived
right.
their right.
Correct.
So
And-
you can still ask, let's say you missed the deadline to object,
Mm-hmm.
which is that objection deadline when we're talking about is the buyer's right to request inspections based on certain things that they've done, or now even their own observation. You can provide that, but the seller doesn't have to negotiate. If you've missed that deadline, they can say, sorry, you've missed it. We won't be negotiating. The contract stays as it is.
And If you miss a deadline and it's something like a home inspection, you can do an amendment, addendum to the contract and request an extension to deadlines that we're maybe going to miss. We've had times where an inspector gets sick at the end of our timeline to do something. So we send over an addendum and say, hey, we'd like an extension to that. So that's part of what we're watching, right?
Yes, and important to note there, the seller doesn't have to agree.
Right.
Just because we've issued an extension, there's nothing binding to that unless both parties have agreed.
However, in most cases, we
They
get
do.
extensions because the seller's already packing. They want it to happen. They don't want to start over, right? Normally people are working collaboratively.
So we talked about contingencies. We've talked about dates and deadlines. What do you do to track the dates and deadlines, or what does a transaction coordinator do, or how's that work?
So for me right now, I'm able to use the platform that you guys have built through a system called Open to Close, and that kind of triggers me. I open it every day. I review everything, make sure we're on time.
It triggers
Triggers you.
It triggers you.
triggers me. Triggers me in a lot of ways. No, in a good way, not a bad
Yeah,
trigger, but
yeah.
it lets me know where we stand within all of our files. Prior to Open to Close, I just had a binder with every morning we would open it, look it up, and make sure I had everything on file. I'd go through my paper
Yeah,
files
yeah.
every single day. So it is nice that it's automated now, but if I see something coming up, I send a message to our brokers and say, hey, heads up, resolution deadline or objection deadline, or you need to be on track for this. Where are you at in this process? Do you need help? Is there something I can do? Do we need to talk about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the big this is kind of I guess a contingency is the money, the financing. For a seller, obviously they want to know that the buyer is financially able to purchase the property. They want to know that if they're getting a loan, that everything's moving along. How does that process work from appraisal to everything else that happens with the financing?
So really, I rely heavily on the lender to let us know, but I do check in with them. I check in with them. Of course, you send the contract, you open the order. Within contract time frame, usually for us is about 10 days for appraisal order. I make sure that appraisal's been ordered. If it hasn't, then I remind the lender that it needs to be, because contractually that's where we're at. And then we follow up, make sure the appraisal does come in, and then I check in with them about every 7 days throughout the process, once a week typically, if they don't have an automated check-in, just to make sure we're on track.
And to be clear, it's the buyer's responsibility to make sure that appraisal has been ordered, because generally the buyer is paying for that appraisal if there is an appraisal.
Generally, that's true. I don't leave it up to the buyer. Personally, just I'm a micromanager. I don't leave it up to the buyer. I am going to go ahead and check in and make sure that the lender is aware, because sometimes they'll say, I don't want to do that just yet. Well, that's not how the contract's written, and we need to go ahead and get it done.
Right.
So okay, I'm going to put this out there. What is a closing when we talk about real estate in New Mexico?
When you get to closing is when each party, normally not together, they have separate appointments, actually show up to the title company. They sign the final set of documents and make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. Money, if they have to bring some in, is coming in a form of cashier's check or wire to the title company. The seller's coming in, they're signing their part of the paperwork, leaving keys and everything at title.
And the buyer can just take the keys
No,
and go
they
move into
cannot.
their house.
Absolutely not. So that's just closing, right? That's just the actual signing and facilitation of the final set of loan docs.
Signing.
It's the signing. What happens after that, if we have a lender involved, all of the documents have to go back to the lender. It goes through a final check. They let the title company know they are okay to record and then release funds. The title company then electronically provides the warranty deed to the county that it should be recording in. Once that's done, title company funds the file, meaning all monies are dispersed to the parties necessary. At that point, buyer can have keys, they can move in, they can go forward and enjoy their lives.
Yeah, and so a lot of times we'll talk about, okay, there's the settlement signing date, and then there's the recording date, and then there's the funding date, and maybe the possession date. And they don't necessarily all fall on the same date.
They don't necessarily always line up. Usually they do. We try really hard to make that happen within a 24-hour or 1 business day time frame, but it's not always that way.
Pro tip, don't schedule your settlement signing on the last day of the month or on a Friday, and you expect to get possession on that Friday.
Or in some rural counties, Fridays in general. There are some counties that don't even record on Friday, which means we can't fund.
Yeah.
And don't have your moving truck sitting outside the title company when you're signing, because you most likely aren't going straight to your house. Now, sometimes we make deals where the seller is okay with somebody getting keys before it's final because all the money's at title. It's just, got to get to the county. But generally, you don't get keys until everything's done.
So let's talk about the inspection contingency. We talked about it briefly, but Tracy, I mean, you always call it the second negotiation.
Yeah, well, that's not really the inspection part. It's the repair request.
Yeah.
So obviously in our contract, we have dates where a buyer can ask for repairs. Doesn't mean that the seller has to agree, but they have the opportunity to do their due diligence, do any inspections visually of their own or hiring other people to get reports and things. And then they have a date in the contract that they would need to object by and say, hey, I really want these things taken care of. It could be a very small thing, or it could be a very large thing, or many things. It goes to the seller's side and they get to reply. And to me, these are the emotional, hard negotiations when we get to repair requests, right? Because the seller's already 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks into it. They've already made plans where they're going. They've made deposits. They've booked moving trucks. They've got the house half packed up. They don't really want to show the house again and have the deal fall through.
Right.
Because now it doesn't look like showing condition typically. So those are hard negotiations on both sides. The buyer wants to move into a pretty nice house and the seller's already trying to get somewhere else.
And your role in that, Leah, as a transaction coordinator is just kind of, like you said earlier, like the puppet master, making sure all these dates and deadlines are hit and
Yes.
reminding you let the realtor to the negotiations generally, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things, Leah also works on houses we list for sale.
Sure.
So she's also working a lot of times for the seller, not the buyer's broker, right? So a lot of times Leah's also helping the seller figure out contractors, helping them source out bids and ways to figure out how much those repair costs are going to cost them and who they can have to rely on to help them get them done before they respond to that repair request. Because sometimes they get a repair request and it says, replace the septic tank. And the client's like, I've never replaced a septic tank. And we say, here's the normal septic companies in our market. You can get bids. We can help you with that, right?
Right. And we provide the information. What's important to note is I always provide the information and let the clients make the decision. I'll do the footwork. I don't mind doing that. I will do the legwork. If they'll tell me, okay, I want to use ABC Septic Company, or let's go with this roofer. I've heard a lot of good things. So they're always making the decisions. I never do that for them, but I have absolutely no problems making the calls, getting the bids, making sure the contractors get over to the property when they're supposed to, when they tell me they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making sure that stuff happens.
Got it. Okay, let's jump over. We've talked about this briefly, but let's just go a little deeper. We've got things like insurance that needs to be done. We've got title policy that's got to be reviewed. Again, septic, or not septic. Well, it could be septic, but survey, it could be. And then there's other things like all these different documents. So just trying to make this as high level as possible without getting in the weeds. But what does this mean? Review a document or review a bit of information for a buyer?
Nothing goes to the buyer without having my eyes on it first. So if there's, or anybody, whether it's the buyer or the seller, I should say our clients. So if there is an issue or there's something to make note of, I'm going to know it and I'm going to make everybody aware, whether that's the realtor or our client or the other. Sometimes it's the other side. Sometimes if we're on the buyer's side and I get a title commitment and I can see in the binder that there are TJs, which are transcripts of judgment, or liens on the property, they may not have been aware of that.
Correct.
So I'll let the listing broker know, hey, requirement on Schedule B2, number 6 and number 7.
Let me jump in, though, and say, ultimately, it's the buyer's responsibility. We're trying to look for those things.
Right.
But if we don't see something, it's not, and we've passed a document along, really, ultimately, the buyer needs to be reading them and saying, hey, I don't know what this is, or I'm concerned, is this a red flag? So you're saying that you notice everything, but you can't
I don't
totally.
notice everything, but
Right.
I will at least take a look at it.
Well,
But burden of discovery does fall to buyer, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's a really key point, because you have to know what you're buying or what you're agreeing to. And there's a lot of documents as a buyer, right? You're
Yeah.
dealing with lending, you're dealing with the title company, you're dealing with, again, inspections, and you're dealing with an insurance company. And it's just all this stuff, but don't be afraid to ask questions either, because I think sometimes people they'll get a something like a title binder, right? We call it title binder. Most people don't know what that means, right? What is that?
Or what they're looking at.
And what they're looking
Yeah.
at, and they'll go, oh, I guess I'm supposed to know what this is, and I'll look at it and I'll read it, and okay, I did that. No, call your realtor, call your transaction coordinator. What am I
Well,
looking at? Or call the
Or
title.
call the title company.
That's
Yeah.
what we
There are-
suggest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Call the person that created this
Yeah.
title
That's
binder,
providing
right?
it to you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, that's awesome. Well, okay, so we've got through this. We've fulfilled all our dates, our deadlines. We're past all of our contingencies, and like now we're in the final stretch. It's like what are the final things that you're doing just to make sure we're ready to bring this over the finish line?
So let's say we're completely through all three phases of negotiation, right? Your initial contract, your inspections, and your appraisal. Those are the three main phases of negotiation. Then it becomes, if during the repair negotiation there are physical things that have to be done, I'm making sure that they're completed within the deadline, because one of the other contingencies is there's a blank number of days prior to closing that all agreed upon repairs have to be done.
Correct.
So what is that day? Is it 3 days? Is it 5 days? Is it 7 days? My job is to know what that date is and make sure that those repairs are done. We've coordinated a final walkthrough once repairs are done, but before closing your settlement and signing, there should be a period in there where the buyer enters the house one last time to make sure that it's where they want it to be prior to signing.
So let's talk about that final walkthrough. I mean, what is the final walkthrough, Tracy? What's the intent there?
Oh.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Like final walkthrough. It's really just a time to walk through the house, make sure there's nothing. Like when we look at the house, a lot of times it's full of furniture. Now it's empty. Now we're going to see if there's really holes under the carpet where the couch was, or making sure there's no wall damage or something significant, right? Because you're buying a resale house. It's not new, but we want to make sure it's in substantially the same condition as it was when we saw it previously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think that my takeaway from all of this is buyers and sellers do this every 10 years, let's say. We do this every single day,
Yes.
multiple times a day. And I think sometimes people's ego gets in the way and they're afraid to ask, like, well, I don't know.
Well, or they don't
understand."
even know what to ask.
They don't even know what to ask. So lean on your realtor, lean on your transaction coordinator, lean on the title person, lean on the home inspector. Ask the
Yeah.
questions. Don't let your ego mess up, the deal because you were afraid to ask a question.
I'd rather be asked 7 million questions than none at all.
Yeah.
Because then at least I know they're engaged. They're
Right.
taking this seriously.
Yeah.
Totally.
They have to, ultimately it's theirs, right? It's not mine. We close a file and I get to walk away and move on to the next one. This is where they're staying. This is their home or investment property or whatever the circumstances may be. It's theirs to deal with at that point until such time as they go to sell. Or for a seller, if they thought something, they were going to get to keep something and it's not in the contract, and then we've got,
Yeah.
Yeah.
issues with.
Well, and I want to bring up one last thing is the reality is about 25 to 30% of properties that go under contract or pending, as we call it, end up coming back on market or falling through. And there's a gazillion different reasons. Many times it has to do with the inspections and some surprises there. But there can be a lot of other reasons. But managing this process can help lower that.
Absolutely.
Can help. Like I said, this is the most, I don't know what the right word is, dangerous part of the real estate transaction. It's not the fun part of either getting your home on the market
Right.
or, home shopping.
Or closing day.
Yeah.
or closing
And a lot
date.
of my job is mitigating that risk, right?
Yeah.
A lot of my job is basically just kind of making sure everybody's smooth, everybody's
And
Like
the
you're
reality,
herding cats.
it is hurting. It is. Yeah. And the reality is certain things are just going to fall through, and buyers also need to know when it's time to pull the plug and say, you know what, this is not right for me. And they have those options to do that. They're
Within timeframes.
within timeframes. It's in the contract. They have those options, but they need to understand that, hey, if they miss those options, they've got an agreement.
right.
Okay, that was great. Thank you, Leah.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Leah.
So-
You're welcome.
I'm just excited to get to this next segment.
Of course you are.
Yeah. Active adult 55 plus communities. So when we were talking about this, I was with somebody at Jubilee in Los Lunas this week who would like to sell their home. And Jubilee is a really special community right there
So what you're saying, if somebody's is interested in a 55 plus neighborhood,
in a beautiful home in a great gated neighborhood on the west side of I-25 in Los Lunas, we know of one.
you just talk to them, right? You don't have a listing.
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
Yeah.
Just
okay.
talk to them.
Okay.
Probably not going to actually list it, but I know of it.
Yeah.
So-
Understood. Okay.
So that community, Tego, I don't know if you've ever seen the clubhouse.
I
there.
have.
Oh my
A long
gosh.
time. I mean, when it was relatively new, I haven't been there in a while.
It's amazing. And I can't even off the top of my head rattle off all of the amenities it has, but they now have pickleball, of course.
Oh, of course.
They have I think it's a 3/4 size Olympic pool. They have shuffleboard. They have bocce. They have a gym. It's anything you could want if you want to participate. Of course, when people live in some of these 55 plus communities, some people are all about all the activities and the book club and the wine club and going to the state fair on a bus together or whatever their passion is and creating a club and using the facilities. Some people just move in and they live in their house and they might get to know their next door neighbor. They might not, right? So you can do whatever you want. But when I started looking at the opportunities, because we get these calls, we have people relocating, we have people downsizing. The 55 plus thing, I used to not be that cool on it until I started visiting these communities going, Tego, we could do this, So there's the Del Webb communities. There's Alegria. It's technically in Bernalillo in North Rio Rancho area. One of the first big developments like that here that has a clubhouse and a swimming pool and, beautiful facilities and a director of, I don't know,
Right, right.
that plans
What
events
was,
and
what was
things.
her name? Julie from the Love
From
Boat?
the Love Boat. That's
Yeah,
what came in my head.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all I could think of was the Love Boat.
Yeah.
But, Alegria is on the side of the hill. Most of the houses have beautiful views to the mountains. It's lovely. And then there's Del Webb Muirhaven, which is I-40 Unser, west of Unser, with another beautiful clubhouse, beautiful views, great amenities. But when I started looking at it, I was like, but there's so many more. And over the years, I know I've shown them. So I started looking at it. And the one that comes up the most, unfortunately, is a mobile home community that's called,
Why, unfortunately?
what is it called? I can't think of it. The one that's on Pan American.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can't think of it either.
I can't think of
Yeah.
it. But, the prices look really good. $69,000 right now for one, $79,000 for another. And, it's a nice mobile home park. You don't own the land. So what people don't know when they call us about that and they say, I want that $70,000 or $80,000 house, I go, do you know that the land cost to have it there is $1,100 a month? So they're thinking they're going to have a very low cost to live there. But,
The land lease itself.
the land lease itself is $1,100 a month. And so you quickly have a much higher monthly payment, right? And a lot of those communities don't have regular financing.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just go to a great local lender and get a normal loan to buy that. So it's a tough one because people call and they're excited and it's not what it seems. But then I was like, okay, I've sold houses on Grand Boulevard in Rio Rancho at the Golden West
Sure.
patio homes,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, they're
they're
great.
lovely.
Yeah.
Right across from Intel practically, walking across the street to Smith's grocery store and coffee shops and everything.
Well, it's right
Yeah,
there.
it's right
where
there.
Define Fitnesses used to be the old Kmart, but yeah, it's right across from that too.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Those are running the high 100,000, around 200,000 and up now. HOA fee on those isn't that bad. It's around $250 a month.
I
They
think
have an indoor
the
pool
thing
there.
that people, I mean, I know some people just want to get away. They don't want to be around people. They don't want the social experience, right? So they'll move out to Placitas or the East Mountains and just get away from it all. But, these have great social environments if that's your thing, right? If you really like to get connected and know your neighbors, these are awesome for that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Others, well, one surprised me. I don't know if you know of it. It's called Sunrise Bluff in Belen.
Yes.
And houses there start around 235,000 resale homes. HOA fee there is pretty reasonable, $150 a month. So, Belen, not too far. You go to Belen almost every
I
day.
go to Belen almost every day. Yeah.
Yeah, for basketball and kids activities.
So let me bring some stats into this. So I posted this on my Facebook the other day, Tego Venturi, if you want to check it out. But it was United Van Lines. They do a survey every year about
movement,
like
where people
where
are going
people are
to,
moving and why they're moving, and
where they're
and
from.
they just brought out their most recent 2025 survey. And for New Mexico, 18.4%, so let's say 18.5% of the people that came into New Mexico inbound were coming in for retirement, which is actually a little higher than I would have expected. It was actually on the outbound side for retirement, it was less than that. It was only 13%. So more people are coming in for retirement than are leaving for retirement is my takeaway on that. And okay, I gotta give it a little short story on this. Years ago, I was talking to somebody in the home building industry that was kind of like a lobbyist for the home building industry and home building. And he said, yes, we want New Mexico to be a retirement destination. He said, because retirees have money and don't need a job.
And they bring that money here.
Right. And I thought that was an interesting take. And I know that talking to people with the Pulte Group, they would like to do another Del Webb type community because Del Webb is a Pulte brand.
Right.
But I don't know if they found the right site yet. But
I know they were looking.
They're looking, yeah.
Okay, so going back to where I started, Jubilee in Los Lunas.
There we go, Jubilee, yeah.
We were talking about retirees, and one of the things that I said when I was with the gentleman there is that I have helped people personally who are retiring from the military going to Jubilee because they were here at some point for military service at Kirtland or one of the affiliates, and they loved our climate and they have come back and relocated here. So just to piggyback on that, he said to me, yes, 2 of the neighbors that I know are retired military that chose to come back to New Mexico. So there you go.
So Jubilee, Los Lunas to like the airport. What is that? 15 minutes? 20 minutes?
20.
20? Okay.
Yeah. I enjoy that drive. I'm sure you do it almost every day, but not to the airport, but to our office.
Yeah, here.
I just Googled it. 23 minutes. There we go.
Now.
From Jubilee to the Sunports, 23 minutes.
Yeah.
And, the traffic's a little bit bad there right now because they're still doing lanes and new stuff over the bridge right there.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah. When I was down there this week, I followed many semis taking things out to, I guess, the Facebook site.
There's a Walmart distribution center out that way,
too.
And also the Amazon Prime Center.
Well,
right, but these were like construction semis with huge, like the kind that are like V-shaped, the trailer, that they're full of something. I don't know what. Anyway, it was a lot of semis and trailers.
When this went down that road, there was just a big announcement that 400 and plus acres just got purchased by Facebook, that it's just west of the Facebook data center there. So it's a big deal. It means basically that Facebook is going to continue their data center build out there on the west side of the freeway in Los Lunas, which is right by the train tracks. And then there's a whole master plan to do a train depot, train yard center in that area. There's a big piece of land there. So there's a lot going on over there just on the west side of the freeway in Los Lunas. And
there's a lot of great new home builders there that we could help you with if you're thinking of a new home and being 25 minutes to the city.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to wrap.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay. We could just keep talking forever.
I know. And I heard this and I heard that. We appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, I hope the information about the transaction process on a real estate is helpful to you. If you have any questions about real estate in Albuquerque, Tracy, why don't you give our contact info?
Sure. So welcomehomeabq.com is our website. It's packed with useful information. But easiest, just to give us a call, 505-448-8888. Easy peasy. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Thanks, Leah.
Thanks.